a lot of people really in a time of grief and in a time of mourning and in a time of like, I just want closure, they're very hesitant to reach out to somebody.
Sure.
And we have systems set up. I mean, you call, you speak to our paralegals, you give us your information, tell us what happened. It's really a fact-sensitive basis, because one of the things that I actually like to do, and I spent so much time doing it, and we don't really get compensated for it, is if I could give you that closure without having to sue anybody.
Sure.
Right? Maybe you write a letter to the funeral home and there's a perfectly good explanation, right? And you don't have experience doing this because this is the one time that this has happened to you.
Right.
But I've done dozens of these.
Sure.
Right? And so if somebody tells me, oh, well, this happened, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Or they show me, a chain of custody and I'm like, oh, okay, that's good enough for me to tell me that, yes, this was a mix-up, but this mix-up got resolved because you only had 2 sets of remains in your funeral home at the time, and this person says they have this one, and that means I have the other one. Right. And so I've had people call me and they say, hey, my son's not buried where they say he is. They told me he was over here, and now they're telling me he's over here. I go out to the cemetery with them, or I write a letter to the cemetery, and the cemetery says, here's our records are good, we're confident, this or that, right? And I go out to the cemetery with them and we walk the graves, and I see it, and I could say, look, I know you might have been heated when they're explaining it to you. You're grieving. You're like, I don't believe you. You're the cemetery guy. But look, it's in my interest to pursue this case if there is a case, but it's also in my interest to not pursue a case if there isn't.
Not.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if I can give you that closure, if I could walk through the process with you in a way that it says, hey, look, there's really nothing here, right? That'll also help.
And we know this from you might say like, well, why couldn't the funeral home or cemetery just properly explain that? But these miscommunications happen, and a lot of times, and I'm sure folks listening and watching this know from other experiences in their life that like sometimes you just need an attorney to send a letter for people to actually start behaving properly, right? And so I think there's a lot of value in that.